Woodburn's Solving Your China Business Pain Points. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. And in today's episode, we are going to be looking at the business culture in China. Now, lots of organizations in China seem to face huge capability gaps when it comes to successfully implementing global strategies. The strategy may be fine as a concept, but Chinese individuals within companies very often lack a sufficiently global mindset to allow them to implement the strategy successfully. And that's when things can go wrong. Many of the problems related to any corporate globalization process are caused by a lack of global cultural fluency, which leads people to take the same approach to everything, every time, everywhere. They embrace a one-size-fits-all mentality. In the multifaceted, complex, global world that we all live in today, this approach doesn't work. Perhaps it worked 20 years ago when the big players ruled the world, but the world has since become a much more level playing field. And a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. And this is why a lot of companies are now implementing diversity, inclusion, exercises to help individuals within organizations recognize the differences between cultures, to recognize the diversity that exists and the cultural differences and language barriers that exist, right? So a big question is, what should companies and individuals within these organizations do when it concerns China? So I want to provide 5 tips in terms of business culture in general, all right? Number 1 is recognize and accept how little you know about China. There's no shame in recognizing that you don't know what you don't know. And if you start with the assumption that there are a multitude of unknowns and then accept that it is your responsibility to do some initial research on those unknowns, things will probably work out better for you. So do your research on the Chinese market and on the Chinese people. Number 2 is you also need to accept that you take a significant level of cultural bias into every cross-border transaction. Your background makes you see things in a specific way, but your Chinese counterparty probably looks at the same situation and sees something completely different because they have a cultural bias. Number 3 is build into your thinking that just because things are different in another country, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are wrong. They might be wrong, but a different approach might be better than the way you do it back home. Now, this obviously sounds simplistic, but it is very often a difficult message for people to take on board. Number 4, and I say that because most people think they know their company, they know their product, and they know everything better than everyone else. But when you then expand into a new market, you need to have the locals help you give you a different perspective on it, right? Number 4 is think about the impact of every decision that you make for China. A centrally determined policy is usually biased towards the country that it originates from, usually where the head office is located. You want to move towards a flatter structure? Great. But how do you make that work in a country where hierarchy is not only the norm, but seen as the way in which the whole world, both business and private, is and always has been shaped? A message from head office or a town hall meeting is not going to change a mindset of 4,000 years in the making. Okay. So when you are coming up with centralized decisions that should be spread out globally into all of the offices, you've got to tweak them based on local cultural discrepancies and thought processes of your staff and your team. Point 5 is accept that a good idea is a good idea, regardless of who came up with it and where it started. Not all good ideas start with you or in your country. The sign of a truly mature global company is when you begin to hear people in the center talking about the things they can learn from the outside, i.e. other countries like China. Not all good ideas start in your head office, but equally not all ideas which come out of the head office are bad. One of the concrete problems that we still see today is this communication barrier between China and its head office. And there's cultural bias. There is the fact that one wants to win over the other, and it's both mutual, right? These are just general characteristic traits that people tend to have. We need to listen to each other more. We need to be able to communicate with each other more. We need to be able to understand each other's perspectives and build a solid bridge of communication. Okay. You're one entity. There should be no competition one with the other. To finish today's episode, I just want to say, and I say this a lot, knowledge is power, knowledge is key. People within your organization, and not just the senior management, everybody that has to do with the subsidiary in China needs to be more aware of the impact that international culture has on every facet of business. They need to be given the specific knowledge necessary to work their way around a complex global environment. And then they need to apply that knowledge and awareness for the benefit of the business. One thing is certain, cultural fluency within an organization never happens by accident. It needs careful planning, training, and targeted interventions. If I can give one tip as a starting point to understand the cultural aspects of China, is to understand when the public holidays are. Because the amount of phone calls we get when people don't know about public holidays, when generally people take extra days break, over Chinese New Year, over the October holiday, over the Labor Day holiday. Next weekend, we've got Dragon Boat Festival. Be aware of just these minor things. Another thing is understand time zone differences. Getting phone calls at 10 o'clock at night and you having the expectation that the China team is going to be wide awake is silly. So please be aware of all of these facts. And if you enjoyed today's video, please press that like button. Please share it. Our mission is to help as many people that are struggling with doing business in China. If you would like to learn more about what we do at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, head on over to our website, woodburnglobal.com. And if you are struggling with these pain points, then click on our link to our diary. We would be happy to have a one-to-one conversation with you. Have a great day. Take care and goodbye.